took an oath to the Constitution, isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs. And they are not, in my view.
So that's New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. And welcome back to the show, by the way. Dana Loesch with you. This all unfolded over the weekend. And she also said in that, and I have all of this up at Substack, chapter and verse, and I have a whole bunch of stuff coming at you too, so you don't want to miss it. But she had said, even at one point, that she, in talking about her public health emergency, she had even said that her oath to the Constitution is, quote, not absolute. So she says that there's a public health emergency. Gun violence is made a public health emergency in New Mexico. So let me explain this edict that she pushed out. It is a ban on all open and concealed carry. And it actually applies to, it's statewide, but here's the caveat. It's geared towards cities with high violent crime rates. And currently, according to their criteria, only Albuquerque actually qualifies. So even though it's a statewide mandate, only Albuquerque really is being impacted. And she says she's going to review the ban after 30 days to determine whether or not the ban will continue. You know, like 15 days to slow the spread, right? Now, according to and I have all of the exclusions in here. She says they have in there, there's several exceptions, they say. There's several exceptions in this. They say that the public health order, because again, that's how they're classifying this, the public health order does not impact private property, licensed firearm dealers, fire ranges, blah, blah, blah. Anybody traveling between those locations must store their guns in a locked container or safety box. They say it doesn't apply to law enforcement. And they said the regulation of licensing the regulation and licensing division will conduct monthly inspections of the blah, blah, blah. That's already with FFLs. They say that no firearms, we already know that you can't have firearms on schools because that's 30 years it's been federal law. They said that also parks, that's new. So they've added parks, basically all public places. You can't conceal or open carry. And in her remarks that she gave, the justifications that she used for this, she mentioned a 5-year-old who was fatally shot while asleep in a motorhome. She also mentioned a 13-year-old who was killed as well, and then an 11-year-old that was critically wounded when they got hit with bullets after people left a game at a baseball stadium. Now, here's the thing. They're still, I think, looking for the suspect with the 11-year-old fatality, but they have there's no evidence at all whatsoever to support she's begging the question here that it's anybody that has a license to carry or concealed carry holder permit, because there's zero evidence that concealed carry holder permits are in any way responsible for this. But furthermore, the 5-year-old who was struck and killed, that was done by teenagers. The 13-year-old girl was shot and killed by a 14-year-old boy. These are already teenagers, and they are considered prohibited possessors because they are not old enough to purchase and carry a handgun. The 5-year-old, obviously the group of teenagers were in illegal possession of a firearm. They committed a drive-by. The 13-year-old was charged with homicide, and the parent from whom they got the firearm was charged under pre-existing negligence law, which is why you don't need, negligence law covers all this other stuff. You don't need additional laws for this. At no point does concealed carry factor into any of these crimes, and there's no evidence that it does so. So if prohibited persons are willfully violating the law to illegally carry, banning all carry is not going to have any effect at all, except only on innocent people's ability to defend themselves. Now, they keep saying, oh, it's the crime rate. This is what the left loves to do. Just like they wanted to try to use a public health emergency as a way to control whether or not you can collect rent, while still paying taxes in your mortgage. Public health emergencies, these edicts are so abused. Under a public health emergency, you had to be shuttered up in your home for a year and your business had to be closed. This is why the left constantly wants to proclaim anything related to firearms as a quote-unquote public health emergency when it's a criminal issue. Case in point, at no time does Grisham talk about what's contributing to the rising crime rate in New Mexico and in specifically Albuquerque. So the now Attorney General of New Mexico, his name is Raul Torres. He used to be the DA in Albuquerque. And right when the crime wave was starting to spike, then Albuquerque Police Chief Gordon Eden had said that the recent spike was specifically due because of the case management order they said that went into effect back in 2015. They said the state Supreme Court order that affected the Albuquerque area was this is restorative justice, aimed at reducing the population in jail by moving cases through the courts more quickly. This is a direct quote from Eden when he's describing this in an Associated Press interview. He says, quote, with the case management order, we started to see cases being dismissed by the district attorney's office and started to see the jail population decrease. Quite frankly, what I think happened here is there were too many decisions being made in the criminal justice system, and it's created a real perfect storm for our state and the second judicial district, end quote. So you have the DA, who, by the way, was Soros-backed to the tune of 6 figures, and I provided the link to all those donations on my Substack. You had the DA who is busy dismissing cases right and the left, and this clueless governor who wants to pretend that she doesn't understand why crime is on the rise. Now, the new DA isn't any better. So Torres is now the Attorney General of New Mexico. The new DA in Albuquerque is a Grisham hand-picked Democrat establishment stooge who was one time accused of directing staffers to publish stolen emails of the former governor, Susana Martinez, who's a Republican and a female, that included receipts about her underwear purchases. He got in a lot of trouble for that. That's the current DA, just in case you wanted to know. And what's more, because of course you know there's a lot more, Tim Keller is the mayor. He is the mayor of Albuquerque. What do you think that they've been spending taxpayer dollars on in Albuquerque? Because, you have this increase in crime, right? You have an increase in crime, and you have businesses that are saying, we need additional protection. We're worried about this. We need additional protection. They're saying, and everybody's been saying, they were looking at how Torres's, his restorative justice increased the crime wave. So Democrat policies on restorative justice increased the crime wave. Businesses were begging for additional protection. And then how do Democrats respond to this? So Tim Keller, let me pull this up. So Tim Keller and the Democrat City Council in Albuquerque gave $250,000. This is this was reported just in August of last year. They gave $250,000 to Planned Parenthood. This is taxpayer dollars. At the exact same time, businesses were begging for an expansion in police protection. And do you want to know what the Democrat response was to that? To all of these businesses who were begging for additional police protection due to the high crime rate brought on by the Soros-backed restorative justice DA, the mayor of Albuquerque actually told them that they need, if they want police protection, they need to pay a little bit more. That's racketeering. You're creating this is not even hurt and rescue. This is just hurt and hurt. You're creating a problem with your policies that are disproportionately penalizing these businesses that are just trying to add to your tax revenue. And you're told that if they want police protection, they need to pay for additional police protection. This is June 23rd of last year from the conservative New Mexican, who was also citing a couple of local reports on this. They said that Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller is telling business owners, if you want greater police presence in the crime-infested downtown area, you got to foot the bill. Via the Albuquerque Journal and the conservative New Mexican, he proclaimed at a press conference that downtown's going to do something different. He was talking about their targeted enforcement action monitoring. But he said, look, you need to get some funding because we don't have the funding here. But at the exact same time, literally a month later, they announced that they were giving 6 figures of taxpayer dollars, $250,000 to Planned Parenthood. That's $250,000 that could have gone towards exactly what these businesses were asking for and city residents in Albuquerque. So they refused to take responsibility for the crime that their policies helped create, and they instead shifted the blame onto the businesses. Oh, I haven't even begun. There's so much more. There's so much more here. You have not just, the former police chief there. You have a bunch of other attorneys and citizens who were all going at the former DA, Torres, and I told you the new DA is not any better. They actually had a standing order. They weren't going to prosecute a lot of misdemeanors. What do you think is going to happen when you're dismissing cases for repeat offenders and then not prosecuting other just misdemeanors? What do you think is going to happen? You're giving everybody a pass to commit crimes. This is, again, it's another Soros-infested blue city. And so Grisham's response is to ban all carry. So punishing the innocent for the crimes of the criminals. And what's more, she even admits that she knows that criminals are not going to follow this. She says she knows that criminals are not going to follow this law. She says that she hopes it's a resounding message, though. She goes, quote, "The point here is that if everyone did it and I wasn't legally challenged, you would have fewer risks on the street." Seriously? Now, I saw a couple of people out there pointing out that some of the, like Ted Lieu and some of these other anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment grifter activists out there, they were saying, oh, no, you can't do this. This is a bad move for Grisham. So you had Ted Lieu and a couple of these other anti-Second Amendment grifters out there saying this. You need to be very careful about that because I don't believe them. They're only doing this because, one, they want to make it seem as though they are sensible gun control activists, and they want to get you to lower your guard. But then also, Grisham's move, number 2, blows their strategy of ban via incremental moves, and it puts everybody on alert. I mean, some of these people, Democrats suddenly acting like they care about rights. They had zero complaints about using public health emergencies to enact due process, eliminating red flag law. They didn't care about it when they were closing down your businesses and keeping your kids shut inside the house for a year. And a lot of these same people previously called for all-out bans. So I don't consider them as anywhere near being sincere about this, and neither should you. Now, I have a lot more on this to come because it's pretty amazing when you look at this stunt because it could actually, it's actually typically when this happens, crime increases.